morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Late last night it was confirmed that Ridley Scott will be granting the wish of many a sci-fi fan by not only making Prometheus 2 as his next film after Exodus, which he's currently prepping for a December release, that's his Bible pick with Christian Bale, but that front and center of the sequel will be Michael Fassbender. But get this, not just one Michael Fassbender, but multiple Michael Fassbenders, as there will be multiple Davids in the movie interacting with each other, and Fassbender will be playing all of them. It's kind of like that great Happy Birthday David short as a movie. And I think that when Prometheus first came out, well, I guess just after it came out, when everyone had finally seen the film, many of us had wished that that David short had been the film. I mean, I've long said that I would love to see a movie about just what David did while he was waiting for everyone in hypersleep. I mean, my favorite scene in the film, you might have heard me say this before, but it's when he's watching Lawrence of Arabia with the hair dye under like a shower cap, drinking a glass of milk. It was just so wonderfully eccentric that it was just, I found it fascinating. And I think what really only works in that film is Michael Fassbender's performance. So I love they're going to go further with that. I'm very curious to see. And also the other half of the rumor that hasn't been confirmed, but so much has been confirmed that I think that this will probably end up being true as well, is that this Prometheus 2 will lead directly into the Alien franchise. There were very strong undertones, or I guess foreshadowing, whatever literary term you want to use, that really seemed to link Prometheus to Alien, but in a very weird way, where you saw that they linked, but you were like, I have no idea how Ridley Scott's going to pull this off. Well, I guess we'll get our answer with Prometheus 2. It's a big movie for the studio. It actually did pretty well financially, despite, I guess maybe, because of people being able to make so much fun of it with all the ridiculousness, like, the map, the cartographers getting lost, the guys who make the map, people touching stuff that you shouldn't be touching. I watched that movie actually on demand in the middle of a big storm that we had here in New York City, and it was scary. It was very atmospheric. But I think this is very exciting, and also I think this really speaks to Michael Fassbender's career. He must, Benedict Cumberbatch, Tom Hardy, all of these actors who I think are trying to, have their quote-unquote looks but still be taken seriously as an actor, all must envy what Michael Fassbender is able to achieve. He is able to be, a sex symbol through Shame and films like that, but still, it's such a small part of him. I mean, even Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt must envy what Fassbender has. I mean, think about his upcoming slate of films. He's Magneto, opposite, the younger version of Ian McKellen in Days of Future Past. He looks fantastic there. Magneto is a great role, often dominates that film, anyway, that franchise, but Michael Fassbender is holding up his end of the bargain. Then he has this film, obviously, and then also there's that film Frank, where he has, he plays, it's I think it's a reference many of you said to a real life persona, Frank Sidebottom, who wore a real papier-mâché giant, not just a mask, but a head. And Michael Fassbender is playing that role in this indie film. I reviewed the trailer. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. And it's just phenomenal to see him at work there. I've compared, in my trailer review for that, I compare him to Johnny Depp. And I think there are some aspects there in his ability to be a chameleon and take risks, and wear, as I said, masks, not, also like masks in terms of his makeup. He's one of the few actors who I think changes his look a lot like Johnny Depp. The look of David, very, there's a lot visually going on there as well in the performance. And I think that's great. The reference to, Peter O'Toole from Lawrence of Arabia. Very strong choice by Scott and Fassbender to add that to the character. And he's doing all these things, but he doesn't have the loopiness, he doesn't have the, I guess what you could say, the sellout vibe that I think some people associate with Johnny Depp now, commercial art, where I think for some reason, even though I think Fassbender's art is getting pretty commercial, he is selling tickets, especially in films like Prometheus and, the upcoming Days of Future Past and X-Men First Class. He still has that, indie street cred in the industry. So I guess he should really thank Steve McQueen for that, who has made all of his big indie hits, and I'm sure they'll continue to work together. And McQueen got him his first Oscar nomination as well. He almost came close with Shame, another McQueen pick, but then with 12 Years a Slave, he got on the board. So Michael Fassbender seems to have it all, a career where he can bring in the box office, take risks, make small films, make big films. It's really impressive to see. And I think Michael Fassbender is very deserving of it. So I think that's a fun angle to take here on the Prometheus 2 news, which I think a lot of people, and it's interesting, I think despite the first film not working, people are still very excited for a sequel because of what Michael Fassbender was able to achieve, not just in the film, but in that brilliant short. If for some reason you've missed that short, I will put a link to it in the video description. I know sometimes I forget, but if you just remind me, I check the comments for the first 24 hours, I will put it in. But it's a great short. just brilliant, and I'm so excited for them to expand upon that. I think it should lead into Blade Runner, personally, but that's just me. I think these movies are all supposed to be some Ridley Scott cinematic universe. How interesting to have a cinematic universe named not for a material, but for an artist, a creator. I think that's also a very interesting idea. I hope he pulls it off. All right, so that's the first story of the day. The second story, a lot of you brought to my attention that there were some really big set leaks on the Avengers Age of Ultron set over in Italy, and they were very big. There were some shots of looked like some kind of all-silver Iron Man suit. Makes me wonder if it's War Machine, perhaps. I mean, they're working pretty hard to cover it up in one of the photos. I'm putting some photos up here for you to see. I'll put some links in the video description. But I mean, obviously somebody got a very good shot of it despite their efforts to cover things up, and I really feel these comic book movies need to stop shooting on open sets. I mean, I know they want to shoot outdoors, and I mean, I can understand wanting to have the realism, but these leaks are a little frustrating. But anyway, the big headline for me about this leak is the person we really got to see on display was Quicksilver, and to me, I think this just is the final. It makes it guaranteed that ABC Marvel special was officially a waste of my time, because the concept art that they showed for Quicksilver was pretty underwhelming, and I talked about that when I reviewed the reveal from that special. But now we see, lo and behold, they're shooting Avengers: Age of Ultron, and Aaron Taylor Johnson looks nothing like that. He looks very different, and it's interesting that Joss Whedon, despite all the fan moaning about the really lame look that Bryan Singer has given Evan Peters over on Days of Future Past, where he's all dressed in silver and has silver hair, I'm surprised to see that Joss Whedon has gone the same route with this literal interpretation of the Quicksilver name. I mean, it's a little more sophisticated. It doesn't look as one of you said when the trailer went up yesterday, and we saw Evan Peters in, well, he didn't really run anywhere. At least we saw him moving in that new trailer yesterday. Someone said he looked like he was from the Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl, and I think that's a very apt comparison. But so at least what Joss Whedon has done here with Quicksilver is a little more sophisticated. But I think it's interesting that he's also incorporated the color palette. I think it's funny that Quicksilver, maybe this won't be in the shot, but he's just wearing normal athletic sneakers. Because I guess they could say this is before he's inducted into any like superhero team, which can, S.H.I.E.L.D. can whip him up a pair of cool superhero type sneakers. But still, the rest of his suit looks professional, so I'm surprised it doesn't carry over to the footgear. Maybe, as I said, it's not in the shot. But still, what if it accidentally were to get in the shot? Are they going to have the kind of budget where they can digitally replace footwear? I just think it's very interesting. But he looks looks somewhat cool. The hair is an interesting choice. I'm going to have to see it up close. But it's very different than what we were teased just weeks ago. I mean, what's the point of that tease if you know? Just, very soon you'll show that it's totally different. So I have to take back everything I said about the Scarlet Witch, because who knows what she's actually going to look like. Okay, I had to film a quick addition to today's morning movie news, because I was just getting ready to close up my computer, and I thought, okay, did I miss anything? So I checked all my sources, and I saw that one of you tweeted me that there was also a set photo of the Scarlet Witch, played by Elizabeth Olsen, coming from the set as well. So I wanted to discuss that very quickly and show you the picture. It's better, as I said, again, it's better than the concept art that we were shown on that ABC special, but this is a weird look to me. The goth look, I feel, is so 1990s. I feel like this is what other studios have done with properties in the past, being like, we'll make it more accessible. That I'm surprised to see this from Joss Whedon. It looks like, to be perfectly honest, TV Whedon to me, like what he does on the small screen, which he's had cult success there. He hasn't had huge success, and I think one of the things that's so great about the Avengers is that they have like a very crisp, fresh, and clean look to them. They're a family movie to some degree, but this, I guess she's supposed to start out as the villain, but this doesn't say fresh and clean to me. As I said, it looks kind of TV-like, or like old comic book movie decisions before Marvel came along and showed everybody how it's supposed to be done. More on this at the end of the video with the viewer question and how I think that's changing, but I don't like this. I liked Quicksilver when I first saw him. Also, I'm surprised they don't try to make these characters match a little bit. I think the characters, because they're brother and sister, should seem to match in both their styling, personal styling in terms of their costume, and also what they actually look like. I mean, they're related, right? I mean, they're not half siblings. They're supposed to be twins, and you don't see very many similarities there. Some of you could argue that it doesn't exist in the comics, but that's because artists can only sometimes draw one face. But they should actually still, even if the hair color is different because of their mutant powers, they should still somewhat look similar. But I don't know, very goth. I don't think it's. I also have to say, honestly, as a female viewer, woman to woman, I don't think this is a very flattering look for Elizabeth Olsen. I think the darker hair doesn't look good for her. It flattens her out a little bit. And for something, the way they've made the costume, it seems to remove her neck. And I think that's a very important aspect for anybody. When your head looks too close to your shoulders, it's kind of like it makes you look kind of stumpy. So, and I don't know, the torn stockings, I mean, really, it just seems like, it screams like a Hollywood costume designer being like, oh, I've never read a comic, so I'm just going to draw what I think comics are like, which is a total misconception. It's as bad as the BAMFs and the actual special effects balloons they used to have on the Adam West cartoon. I would say that's right up there. Although some of you might point out that this is a little bit similar to her look in the Ultimate universe in the comics, the Scarlet Witch's Ultimate look. And I guess I could see the similarities a little bit there. I think wait, is it the Ultimate universe, or maybe it's X-Men Evolution, the animated series I'm thinking of. There are some goth, that's what it must be. I think it's the goth version there. And you'll notice that character never really caught on there. So I don't know, I would have preferred, I think, I said many times, her current look, some of you were like, but she has no pants. She has a dress, a long coat in the current Marvel Now comic, the Uncanny Avengers. So I think that's the look I would have gone with. All right, so now we return to our regularly scheduled morning movie news. But I also was impressed with not only the leak of seeing Quicksilver's costume, but I also liked the cleanness of the shots they were setting up. It looked very professional. It didn't look. Sometimes you see these behind the scenes shots and you can't really get an idea for what they're shooting. It just looks kind of like a mess. And you're like, boy, they're going to have to add a lot in post. But here, it looked like they were trying to do as many effects in camera as possible. And I thought that was really impressive. And it looked interesting to me. I mean, already, this looks like a quality production, even from some behind-the-scenes shots. Also, it was funny, they have kind of like this Jeremy Renner shot as well. And I guess kudos for him, even though complaining and Marvel getting pretty upset with him about saying, I don't have enough to do as Hawkeye. They kind of benched him for a little while because of that, but it looks like they're bringing him back in here. So, very curious. Let's see if he can hit a moving target that's moving very fast. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story, usually the first two stories, I try and pick a lighter story for the third one, or maybe something that's not really going to get a lot, it's not like headline news, because I can only really fit two stories into the headline. So you might be wondering how I pick stories. But the third story of the day, I just wanted to mention like a trend. Speaking of comic book movies, also with that X-Men trailer that dropped yesterday, they dropped a new poster for X-Men Days of Future Past. This is a beautiful poster. This is really stunning artwork. It's I think one of the best comic book movie posters I've ever seen. And I think it's an interesting trend that this, in comparison, also when you take into account the Captain America 2 Winter Soldier posters, particularly the Black Widow poster, you're getting Hollywood putting out comic book movie posters that I think look a lot like comic book covers, for the actual comic books. And I think that's a fascinating trend. Maybe it's to try and draw the audience in more. For instance, I'll put up the Spider-Man poster. This is a good poster as well. It makes you think. You stop for a moment. You go, wait, the city's upside down. Oh, no, wait, it's Spider-Man that's upside down. But it's very much a movie poster. You wouldn't see that on a comic book. And so I think it's interesting that Hollywood's PR departments are reaching over to their comic book counterparts and looking for inspiration even there. And it's good to see. Of course, I'm not surprised to see Marvel Studios do it, but that Fox would pick up on this, I think, is impressive. And, I think that this is now going to lead into the question, actually, of the day from Hayden. Hayden C5, and says, "Hi, Grace. Long-time viewer, recent subscriber. I'm glad you finally decided to commit, Hayden. And first-time questioner. My question is, why do you think a lot of people dislike Marvel movies that are not made by Marvel Studios? Is it because they can't get the characters right, the stories they pick, casting, directors? After seeing this trailer for Days of Future Past, I am very much looking forward to this movie, as I have been a long-time fan of the X-Men and the X-Men movies. With Bryan Singer being back to the franchise, he is giving me hope for future X-Men movies. Thank you, smiley face." Well, to answer your question, Hayden, I think for a long time people really complained about other Marvel properties and other studios because Marvel Studios was spoiling us. Marvel Studios, for the most part, is extremely faithful to the source material because it's their source material. Also, when they make a change, it becomes reflected in the comics. They're very lucky that way. So even if we're kind of like, well, that's not how the comics are, Marvel can be like, oh, tinker, 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 yes it is, and we're like, okay, my argument no longer has a foot to stand on because you changed it to match the movie. And the movies are so much fun that it just becomes so frustrating when they switch the comic. I mean, I don't know. I'm mixed on this. As I've said many times, I feel that comic book movies are really hurting comic books because I think comic books are just becoming glorified promotional material for these comic book movies instead of stories in their own right, which is very frustrating to me as a comic book lover. But anyway, that's why people were upset. They were like, oh, imagine if Marvel Studios had this property, I would be getting the classic characters that I love so much in the way that I want to see them. And I think, but also Marvel Studios was not the first up to bat. You had Sony and Fox going first, and I think they changed things up because they didn't believe that the stories would would be able to transfer to a non-comic book audience. And I think they felt, well, we know the movie audience better, so we're going to tinker with it as we see fit and make it, quote unquote, acceptable to movie-going audiences. But then Marvel Studios came along with such resounding success that they really showed everybody else, including Warner Brothers and DC, although I wonder what it will take for Warner Brothers and DC to learn this lesson, that the stories do translate. Mainstream audiences are liking what they're seeing. Some of them are even going into reading comics. I ran into someone the other day at the nail salon, and she said she was starting to read comics because she liked the movie so much. So I thought that was incredibly hopeful and inspiring and a really good sign of potentially things to come. The medium isn't dead. It hasn't been pimped out. So anyway, because Marvel's had such success, I think the other studios are like, well, maybe we don't need to change something. Maybe we should also have that credibility going for us. I mean, why say you have to give a project back to Marvel for it to be done correctly? And I think you're beginning to see that. I think you're definitely seeing that in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I think Singer's X-Men are starting to take steps in that direction as well. This poster is really phenomenal. I think the Apocalypse is something fans have really wanted for a long time, and now Bryan Singer's delivering it. And I think that they're trying to be really faithful to the material. And I think that's fantastic. I think that is the way to go. And perhaps in a shorter period of time, let's try and imagine this, we will be living in a world where we don't complain that Fox and Sony still own the rights to these characters because they're actually doing a good job. If Sony can do it, and I think a lot of us were very doubtful after Spider-Man 3, maybe Fox can do it too. And I'm going to choose to be hopeful because I really liked X2. I think X2 was a phenomenally well done film. And Bryan Singer made that, so I'm rooting for him to return and to prove that Superman Returns was just an anomaly. It was just a creative burp. So I'm curious what you guys think. Can you imagine a world where you're okay with Sony and Fox owning these properties? Why do you think that people complain? What's your beef? If you're one of those people who goes, oh, I can't wait for Marvel to get this back, even though it's very unlikely, why do you want that to happen? What do you think that only Marvel can do? And so what do you think of these posters as well? Do you like them imitating comic book posters? Or do you agree with Hollywood that the material doesn't translate as well? So write your thoughts down below. Thank you for tuning in to today's morning movie news. You can find out tomorrow what story got bumped for Prometheus 2. Thanks for watching. Bye.